In the summer of 1997, something unusual happened deep in the Pacific Ocean. A strange, extremely loud sound was recorded by underwater listening devices. This sound was unlike almost anything scientists had ever heard before. It was short, powerful, and mysterious. Later, people started calling it the Bloop. The name may sound funny, but the mystery behind it captured the imagination of scientists, ocean lovers, and even fans of sea monster stories. In the years after the Bloop was recorded, many theories were suggested, some scientific, some wild, and some that mixed truth with fantasy. Today, we have a strong scientific explanation for what caused the Bloop, but the story of how the mystery unfolded is still fascinating. To understand the Bloop clearly, we need to talk about how the sound was discovered, what it sounded like, why it confused scientists at first, what theories were proposed, and how the final explanation was reached. In the 1990s, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, had a network of underwater microphones, called hydrophones, placed across the ocean. These devices were originally built by the U.S. Navy during the Cold War. Their original purpose was to detect quiet enemy submarines. However, once the Cold War ended, these underwater microphones were made available for scientific research. Ocean scientists used these hydrophones to listen to natural sounds in the ocean. They listened for earthquakes, underwater volcanoes, and the songs of whales. These microphones were extremely powerful. They could pick up sounds from thousands of miles away because sound travels very far in deep water. In 1997, two hydrophones located more than 3,000 miles, about 4,800 kilometers, apart recorded a loud, strange sound. This unusual noise was later nicknamed the Bloop because of the shape it made on audio recording equipment. The shape looked like a rising bloop sound. When NOAA scientists looked at the data, they noticed that the Bloop was not just a small noise. It was a massive, intense, wide-reaching sound. It was one of the loudest natural sounds ever recorded underwater. In fact, the Bloop was so loud that if it had been made by an animal, it would have had to be far larger than any known sea creature, even larger than the biggest blue whale. The Bloop recording itself is very short. It lasts only a few seconds. But the important part is not how long it lasted, but how powerful it was. The sound had a rising frequency, meaning it started low and quickly rose higher, like something moving or shifting. To human ears, once the sound is sped up, it does resemble something like a strange underwater call. But the truth is, the raw sound recorded underwater was too deep and too low for humans to hear without adjusting it. When sped up, it became higher pitched, which made it easier to imagine as a biological sound. This was part of the reason why at first the Bloop puzzled scientists. It had some qualities that sounded like noises animals make, especially when they shift or move rapidly. But its volume, its pure loudness, did not match any known animal on Earth. Whales are the loudest known animals in the ocean, and even they cannot produce a sound as powerful as the Bloop. So if it were a creature, it would have had to be something much larger than any living species we know. That alone created mystery and excitement. When NOAA first announced the Bloop, they simply stated that they did not know where the sound came from. They did not offer any official explanation. This made the public curious. The ocean is still one of the least explored parts of Earth. More than 80% of it remains unmapped and largely unknown. Many people already wondered whether the deep sea might hide creatures that we have never seen. So when the Bloop was reported, one of the earliest and most popular theories was that it might be the sound of some giant unknown sea animal. Some people imagined enormous squids, giant whales, or even mythical creatures like sea serpents. The idea spread widely, especially on the internet, because humans are naturally fascinated by the unknown. We love mysteries, especially ones involving the deep ocean. Even a NOAA scientist made a humorous comment referencing H.P. Lovecraft, a writer known for stories about giant sea monsters. This added more fuel to people's imagination. But most scientists did not seriously believe that the Bloop was made by a creature. There were several problems with the giant animal theory. First, no animal, not even the largest whale, could produce a sound that loud. Second, the sound did not repeat in the way animal calls usually do. Third, the shape of the sound was more like a natural geological event than a biological call. But these scientific points were not enough to stop the public from being excited about the possibility of a giant creature living in the deep sea. Not everyone believed the bloop came from a creature. Other people suggested geological causes. Some believed it could have been a sound from an undersea volcano, since underwater volcanoes can produce loud booms when they erupt. Others thought it might be the result of an earthquake, a large shift in the Earth's crust that causes vibrations. A few theories even suggested that it could be the sound of a large underwater landslide rocks falling rapidly under the ocean floor. But even these geological explanations had problems. Earthquakes and volcanoes usually produce a very different type of sound wave. Their noise travels differently through water and tends to last longer or look more chaotic on a spectrogram. The bloop, on the other hand, had a very specific rising pattern. This rising character was unusual for an earthquake or volcanic noise. So these explanations did not fully convince scientists. At this point, the bloop remained a mystery. It had some features that made it look biological and some that made it look non-biological. No single explanation completely fit. For years, the mystery continued. To understand why the bloop was so mysterious, it is important to know a little about how sound travels underwater. Sound moves through water differently from how it moves through air. In water, sound travels faster, farther, and with more clarity. This means that something happening thousands of miles away in the ocean can still be heard very clearly by underwater microphones. There's also something called the SOFAR channel, sound fixing and ranging channel. This is a special layer of water in the deep ocean where sound travels extremely efficiently. Sounds that enter this layer can travel across entire oceans with little loss of energy. The bloop was recorded in this sound-carrying layer, which was why it was heard over such long distances. Understanding this is important because the bloop's extreme volume meant the source of the sound had to be enormous or incredibly powerful. That is why the mystery was so intriguing. Whether the cause was biological or geological, it had to involve something extremely large and strong. Years after the bloop was recorded, scientists started focusing more closely on the sounds made by ice. In the early 2000s and 2010s, NOAA and other scientific groups recorded many different types of sounds from Antarctica. They recorded large ice masses breaking, cracking, and shifting. These sounds, called icequakes, turned out to be surprisingly loud, sometimes even louder than whale calls. Icequakes occur when huge sections of ice break off from glaciers or ice shelves. These can create massive waves of energy that travel through the ocean. When scientists compared the sound patterns of known icequakes to the shape of the bloop, they found a strong match. The rising pitch, short burst, and huge volume all matched what ice can do when it cracks or collapses on a massive scale. Eventually, NOAA announced that the bloop was almost certainly caused by large icebergs breaking apart near Antarctica, likely due to natural processes such as temperature changes or glacier movement. The location where the bloop was recorded also matched areas where massive ice movements are common. The mystery was finally solved. The bloop was not a sea creature at all, but the sound of gigantic ice chunks fracturing, a natural but powerful event. It may seem strange that scientists did not identify the bloop as an icequake immediately, but at the time, scientists did not have as much information about the sounds produced by ice. They had recorded whale songs, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions, but they had not studied ice sounds in great detail. As more recordings were made in Antarctica, scientists gained a better understanding of how loud icequakes could be. Another reason the bloop caused confusion is that the ocean is incredibly vast and still full of mysteries. Even today, we have explored only a small percentage of the deep ocean. Because of this, whenever something new or strange is discovered, it is natural for people to wonder whether it might be something alive or unknown. The bloop became popular for several reasons. First, it was mysterious. People love mysteries, especially when they involve the unexplored parts of nature. Second, it happened during the early days of the internet. Many websites, forums, and blogs shared information about the bloop, making it spread quickly. Third, the idea of a huge creature living deep in the ocean is appealing to the imagination. Stories of sea monsters have existed for thousands of years in human culture. The bloop gave people a modern version of those old stories. Even though scientists eventually explained the sound as ice, the legend lived on in pop culture, video games, books, and documentaries. Even though the bloop turned out to be something natural and not alive, the incident taught scientists several important things. First, it showed how little we know about the ocean. Even powerful natural events happening deep underwater can go unnoticed unless we have the right tools to record them. Second, the bloop reminded scientists of the importance of careful study. At first, some characteristics of the sound looked biological, but after years of research, scientists found a more accurate explanation based on new data. Third, studying the bloop helped researchers improve their understanding of ice movements in Antarctica. This knowledge has become important in studying climate change, rising sea levels, and the stability of ice shelves. Finally, the bloop inspired many people to become interested in ocean science. Mysteries, even when explained scientifically, can spark curiosity and encourage more research. To summarize the entire incident in the simplest possible way, the bloop was a very loud sound recorded in 1997. People thought it might be from a giant sea creature. But scientists later discovered it was the sound of huge pieces of ice breaking apart in Antarctica. It was real, but it was not from an animal. It was just the ocean and nature doing something powerful that we had not understood at the time. Even though the mystery of the bloop has been solved, people still talk about it because it represents how fascinating and surprising nature can be. It reminds us that even simple sounds can carry amazing stories behind them. It also shows that the ocean is full of sounds humans rarely hear, but which carry powerful natural events. The bloop also remains popular in entertainment. Movies, video games, and stories often refer to it as a mysterious or spooky event. Even knowing the scientific truth, people enjoy imagining what-if scenarios. That is part of human nature. Science explains the world, but imagination fills the gaps and makes the stories memorable. The mystery of the bloop is a perfect example of how science works. At first, something strange is discovered. People wonder about it, guess at explanations, and create stories. Then scientists gather more evidence, study the data carefully, and slowly uncover the truth. The final answer is not always as exciting as the early theories, but it is usually more amazing in its own way. The idea that simple ice can create a sound louder than anything alive is incredible and shows how powerful nature can be. The bloop may not be a sea monster, but it is still one of the most fascinating underwater sounds ever recorded. It teaches us to stay curious, keep exploring, and remember that the natural world still holds many mysteries waiting to be discovered.